A family decided to get into cattle raising, and so whenever they went to set up their ranch, the first order of business was to name that ranch. The trouble was that everyone in the family had a different idea of what the name of the ranch should be. The first person said that it should be Hickory Hollow, the second Magnolia Manor, the third Peachtree Pasture, and finally Willow Way. So as they were unpacking these different names, they were telling a friend that they decided to go with the name of Hickory, Magnolia, Peachtree, Willow Ranch. That same friend asked them how the cows were doing, to which they responded, none of them survived the branding. Sometimes whenever we make things too complicated, we run into unnecessary issues. But thankfully, that's not what we've done here. No, we've got a mission, and it's simple enough that we can remember it. You see, we here at Wayne Church love and serve through Christ. And because it's simple enough to remember it, let's say it together. We love and serve through Christ. We're taking a few weeks to unpack this mission statement, to see what it means to us, and more importantly, how we can live it out. A couple weeks ago, if you missed it, we talked about the first portion of the mission statement, which is love. If you missed that, be sure to go back into our video archive and watch that. But today, we are on to the second portion of this mission statement, which is the serve portion of this mission statement. Now, serving is different than loving because at times love can be simply a feeling. It can be a disposition that we've got whenever we look at other people, but serving requires action. In fact, serving even requires us to sacrifice. It requires us to give up certain things that we might want to do, or maybe even certain places that we might want to be, to go and do other things. It requires us to sacrifice. It's fun to talk about the greatest strengths of a person or a place. What do you love about them? What keeps you coming back to that place? And the same is true of a church. It's fun to ask and to think about all of the great things that are going on, about what keeps us coming back to this place, about what keeps us wanting to be in community with these people. But it's also important to ask the question of what are the greatest challenges of being in relationship with a certain person, or what are the greatest challenges of participating in a certain organization? Well, I asked one very invested member of this congregation what the greatest challenge was that was facing it. And that very influential person said that the greatest challenge facing this place was the fact that we are overbooked, overcommitted, and just plain and simply too busy. We've got much going on. And I suppose that you could back up from here and say that that might be the greatest challenge facing this community in general, or possibly even any Western nation. It seems like we are just simply overcommitted, overbooked, and too busy for our own good. And serving really seems to be the answer to that predicament because, again, serving requires sacrifice. And so serving takes us out of the patterns that we've gotten ourselves into and puts new priorities into our life. Serving requires us to change up what we're doing in order to do something else. Now, Jesus actually touches on how serving and sacrifice go together at a time whenever he is very near to the end of his life. This is recorded from his last week of life, possibly on Palm Sunday. Give it a listen. Some Greeks were among those who had come up to worship at the festival. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and made a request. "Sir, we want to see Jesus." Philip told Andrew, and Andrew and Philip told Jesus. Jesus replied, "The time has come for the human one to be glorified. I assure you that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it can only be a single seed. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their lives will lose them, and those who hate their lives in this world will keep them forever. Whoever serves me must follow me. Wherever I am, there my servant will also be. My Father will honor whoever serves me." So sometimes certain events in our life bring us to other events, and that's exactly what's going on here. You see, we're told by John that some Greeks wanted to see Jesus, and this was sort of a code to Jesus for him to know that his time had come, that he better start wrapping things up and giving some final instructions to his disciples, which is why he's able to talk about the sacrificial nature of serving, that ultimately new life can come out of even death. But it also allows him to talk about how serving is part of this sacrifice. In fact, he concludes, "Whoever serves me must follow me. Wherever I am, there my servant will also be. My Father will honor whoever serves me." You see, servants are followers. Followers are with their masters, and masters honor their good and faithful servants. If we want to be a follower of Jesus, then we've got to go to Jesus. We've got to be where Jesus is. And if we stay right where Jesus is and serve in those places, then the Father will honor us. This is when we've got to recognize that God is always at work. There has never been a time whenever God was not at work. God is most certainly at work now, and there will never be a time whenever God is not at work. The question becomes, will we recognize it? Will we see the work of God? And more importantly, the question actually becomes, will we go and join into the work of God? Because God is on work all around us. This is my dog, Tag. Tag is a miniature dachshund, and like all dogs, Tag is very good at following me or my wife all around, tasty food in hand or not. Tag is always right where we are. The only trouble with that is that we recently moved into a very nice home that has a very nice amount of stairs. And if you didn't know, dachshunds really aren't supposed to do stairs. They kind of look like, a slinky going up or down stairs. In fact, there is actually a slinky dog. You might remember him from the movie Toy Story. He's a dachshund because, again, this is exactly what dachshunds look like, going up and down stairs. And so Tag was so adamant about following us all over our brand new beautiful home that he actually hurt his back a little bit recently. Don't worry, the vet said it's only back pain. With some rest, he'll be just fine. But that's exactly how much Tag wanted to follow us wherever we went. And you can't tell me that he doesn't know that he's not supposed to be doing steps. We've taken great efforts over his 9 years to ensure that he was doing the minimal amount of steps as possible. And with those 4-inch long legs, you can't tell me that it's easy for him to climb up a mountain of steps. But nonetheless, he does whatever it takes to be right there with my wife, Rochelle, or myself. Wherever we go, there he goes as well. All the dog people who are watching know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you happen to be a cat person, well, you'll just have to find your example elsewhere. Now, I hope that you don't hurt yourself while you're in the process of following Jesus, but we all need to be that serious about following Jesus, about the relentless pursuit of finding wherever he is and joining in on that work. As his faithful servants, we need to follow Jesus exactly in that way, doing whatever it takes to be right where he is, and we will most certainly be honored if we do so. So close your eyes for a moment if you feel comfortable doing so. And while your eyes are closed, try to picture something. Where do you see Jesus? Where do you find him? In what sort of places do you see Jesus? Around what sort of people do you see Jesus? Whenever you've got a picture in mind, feel free to open up your eyes again. Keep that image in mind of who you saw Jesus with. Keep that image in mind of exactly where you saw Jesus. Endeavor every day to go to those people and to go to those places, to serve in the places where Jesus already is, because that's exactly where he wants us. Just in case you need a little bit of help picturing where Jesus is, you're welcome to read the stories of his life and to make inferences from that ancient context to our modern context today of exactly where you'll find Jesus and who you'll find him around. But just in case you need a bit more help than that, let me give you a few hints of exactly where Jesus consistently shows up. Jesus shows up when we're gathered together. He famously said, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm there with them." This has been a particularly helpful verse for the church throughout the past couple years of global pandemic. Whenever we've been separated from each other, whenever we haven't been able to get into our church buildings, we've clung to this verse that as long as we're gathered together, that Jesus is right here with us. And one very experienced follower of Jesus used to remind people, even as he joined into church activities on his flip phone, that Jesus doesn't qualify exactly what those people gathered together looks like if they need to be physically in person together. No, being together in the exact way that we are right now most certainly counts. And if you were to back up just a few verses from whenever Jesus gave this famous one, that for where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I'm right there with them, what you would find is that he's not talking about church worship services, even though he's most certainly right here with us right now. No, rather, Jesus is talking about doing the business of the church, even how to handle church conflict well. That's whenever he tells us that whenever 2 or 3 of us are gathered in his name, that he's right here with us. And by the way, it's been a little while since I've done any advanced math, but I can do this level of math. One of me plus, well, however many people that are watching here right now, at least one of you, that means that we've got 2 to be gathered together. So Jesus is most certainly here with us right now, but Jesus is also with us whenever we do our church business. He's at leadership team meetings. He's on the finance committee and the board of trustees. He's with all of the different team ministries whenever they gather together. He's not only showing up in worship services. Now, there's another place where Jesus consistently shows up, and that's among the marginalized. Jesus shows up among the marginalized. In fact, he tells us this story that is both hopeful and also a bit haunting to us. It's hopeful for how straightforward it puts exactly what we need to be doing, but it also holds us accountable and gives us the standard by which we need to be living and serving. Give that a listen. Now when the human one comes in his majesty and all the angels are with him, he will sit on his majestic throne. All the nations will be gathered in front of him. He will separate them from each other, just as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right side, but the goats he will put on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who will receive good things from my Father, inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you before the world began. I was hungry, and you gave me food to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothes to wear. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then those who are righteous will reply to him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you as a stranger and welcome you, or naked and give you clothes to wear? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" Then the king will reply to them, "I assure you that when you have done it for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done it for me." Jesus seems to prefer to talk to himself in the third person, either as the human one or the Son of Man, depending on your translation of the Bible. It's a reference to this messianic vision that Daniel had centuries before. So essentially, he says that whenever I come back and whenever I sit on my throne, I am going to judge people in this certain way. Did you know how we were going to be judged? Because Jesus makes it plain here. There's this simple list that if we serve people, specifically if we serve those that society has pushed out to the margins, essentially those people who are actually in need of our service, that's exactly the basis on which we will be judged. So let's take a look at that list. Did you feed the hungry? I got to sit in on my first Wayne Cares board meeting this past week, and it was a true pleasure. And for those of you who don't know, Wayne Cares is this ministry that began as a food pantry, but I can tell that they've got grander visions than that. And it makes us ask the question of why are people even hungry in this community? And then Jesus continues on by asking the question, did we quench the thirst of the thirsty? And much like the question of hunger, we can also ask, why are people thirsty in this community? Then Jesus asks us, did we welcome the stranger? How hospitable were we to people who we could tell were not from around here, even if they brought their own culture with them? How do we treat people who are different from us, who are strange in comparison to the ways in which we operate? Did we clothe the naked? Much like the questions of hunger and thirst, we've got to ask the question of why there are people in need of clothing where we live. Did we care for the sick? These past couple years of global pandemic have really given us an opportunity not only to be very vigilant about caring for the sick, but also to be proactive enough to take steps to make sure that people didn't get sick. And it made sure that we were unselfish enough to make personal sacrifices so that we didn't even need to care for the sick, because why would you want to care for the sick whenever you could prevent people from getting sick in the first place? Did we visit the incarcerated? This is when a lot of people's lists stop. The first 5 are fine, but this 6th one? Well, this one was actually newer to people in Jesus' day as well. Jewish piety really exhorted the first 5, but didn't have as much to say about this 6th one. But it's more connected to the first 5 on the list than we often acknowledge. Because very, very few people are incarcerated because they are truly evil, but rather, most people are incarcerated because they are in need of the first 5 basic items from this list. And those circumstances push them to doing certain things that help them to get where they are. And so whenever we can step back and look at this list of people who are in need of our humble service, we've got to just say it again. Did you know that this is how you will be judged? Did you realize that this is the basis of our judgment, by how we treat and care for and serve the people who are pushed to the margins of society? And if you can't get yourself to serve these individuals for whatever reason, then at least do it for Jesus, because Jesus himself identifies with the marginalized. He's not only with them, but did you hear all the I statements in this? How Jesus says that I was hungry and you gave me food to eat, that I was thirsty and you gave me a drink, that I was a stranger and you welcomed me, that I was naked and you gave me clothes to wear, that I was sick and you cared for me, that I was in prison and you visited me. No, Jesus isn't simply hanging out with those individuals who are hungry, thirsty, a stranger, naked, sick, or in prison, but Jesus is those very individuals. And whenever we serve them, we're actually serving Christ himself. And so, don't let this day slip by before you take an honest inventory of where you are serving and where you aren't serving. Are you serving in at least one place whenever we are gathered together, whether for worship or leading the work of the church? And are you serving in at least one place among the marginalized, among the people who are truly in need of your service? I know that we've already turned in our team commitments, but there's always still more room to serve. And so if you need more serving opportunities, don't hesitate to reach out. Even type it on the platform that you are watching. We need your service, and more importantly, Jesus needs your service. But don't just serve where Jesus is. Look for the places where he's already at work and simply join him in that work. And if you do so, God will honor you. Let's pray. God, we thank you for how you have invited us into your work. Keep us open to it. Break down every barrier that we might experience to joining you in it. And remind us of the future glory that awaits your faithful servants. God, we pray all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, whom we serve and who taught us how to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.